So the past week or so, I've had a lot of fun working with a programming language called Chez Scheme. And Chez Scheme is an implementation of Scheme, which is essentially kind of a dialect of Lisp. And I've had so much fun with it that I just wanted to introduce it on a video and show how to install it, how to configure it, and then some just basics to get you started on programming. So to install it, if you have a package manager, even if it's on Windows, like say you have Chocolatey or Nougat or let's see whatever package managers there are on Windows, you just look for Scheme, right? In fact, a package manager on any operating system, look for Chez. And this CHEZ. If you look for Chez, you'll probably find Chez Scheme. And you can install that on Linux, Mac OS, any of the BSDs, and Windows. So if you have a package manager. If that does not work, or you want the latest version of Scheme, then you can download it and install it manually using these links here. And I'll put this website in the description below. And what you'll want to do is get the current release, right? So if you go to this link, it'll open up this GitHub page, and you can get the latest version, which at the moment happens to be 10.4.1. And if you download the executable, the Windows executable, if you've got Windows, you can just run the executable, and it will run an installer for you and install the latest version of Chez Scheme. If you have any other operating system, you'll have to download this tar.gz file and then unzip that. And then you'll go into that with a terminal and compile it and install it. And there's actually instructions inside that tar.gz folder. There are building instructions, right? So, which you can see here. Essentially, you'll need a C compiler and a few dependencies, right? So GCC or Clang, and then of course incurses and some libraries for X Windows, unless you disable X11. But even on Wayland, you can actually build this with, if you install lib x11-dev or something like that on Debian and the equivalent on Arch, and Fedora, you can compile for X11, and then at least currently on Wayland, you can run X11 Windows basically, which is nice. Now to compile and install, you just use configure and then make and then sudo make install. So this will do all the standard compilation. It'll configure everything that you need. Typically it'll create a threaded version, and it'll install it in the default place. If you want to do cross compilation or install it in another place, those instructions are actually inside this file. So you can just read this file if you want to do changes. However, I would just recommend doing the default configure, make, and sudo make install. And that's essentially all you need to install Chez Scheme. So what I'll do is I'll go back over to my terminal here, and once you have Chez Scheme installed, you can check to see if you can see it by typing Scheme version. So Chez Scheme calls itself Scheme. So if you do Scheme version, then it should tell you the version. It should print that out. If it does not print that out, then you don't have a good installation, or you don't have it in your environment variables. You need to set an environment variable to tell you where it is. So if I say, so mine is installed in the default place. So if I go which scheme, mine's in user bin scheme, and so that's already part of the path. So I don't have to add it to my path. Now, that's installation. For configuration, there's a couple environment variables that you want to set if you want to use libraries that are external or libraries that you build yourself. And so in order to do that, you'll want to edit your .bash RC file. And of course, in Windows, you want to edit your environment variables. You have to do that in settings. And there's two environment variables that you essentially want to set. The first is this Chez Scheme libdirs. you'll want to create this environment and variable and set it up. It, of course, can have multiple paths on it, delimited by colons, right? So you can see I have a few different paths here. I have just dot, which is the current directory. So whenever you invoke Chez, it can look for libraries that are in your current directory that you're running from. But you can also look for user local lib, and then I've created a directory called Chez libs, right? And that's where I essentially all the libraries that I'm writing, I will put into there. Also, libraries that I download, I can put into Chez libs, and then also shared libraries, right? In Linux. They're SO libraries, which are basically DLLs in Windows. So I put all those there, so I have a nice place to put all of my Chez libraries. So you can have as many paths as you want here, and that's great. Just do whatever you like. But this is what I've done to set up for my setup. The other thing that you'll want to have is LD library path. And I put my user local lib as well as Chez libs in here. And the reason you need the LD library path is if you want to load shared libraries, right? So SO files or DLLs, if you're on Windows, then you need to have this LD library path, because what Chez is going to do is it's going to look at that environment variable and say, okay, what paths can I look at to import shared libraries from? And so that's so this is important if you're using the foreign function interface. So which is actually super useful and very nice. I'm actually going to make a video about how to use the foreign function interface in a future video. But you just want to set these two things. So if you set these two environment variables, then you're set and you can do pretty much anything that you want, and you're off to the races in Chez Scheme. So now, that is basically the second thing I wanted to cover. So we've got installation, we've got configuration, and then I just want to cover some basics of running Chez Scheme. So you can run the Chez Scheme in a REPL, which means read eval print loop, and it allows you to do normal things that you would want to do in a REPL, right? You can just type expressions in. You can even define functions. So I'll define, say, hello. Actually, wait, I'll do hello with name. And we'll say format, let's see, yeah, true. Hello, we'll give a person's name. Whoops, we'll do this. And then we'll say name. There we go. Whoops, okay. There we go. So now we've defined hello, and if I say hello, Phil, then it will say hello, Phil. So you can define functions, you can define variables, you can do all this, and you can now, obviously, it's kind of stuck in the REPL, it's not saved anywhere, but you can do programming. And this, I actually like to use the REPL to try little experiments, and it's very useful. You can also load in scheme files into the REPL, which I'll show in just a second. To exit, you can just type exit, and that will exit. We can also create files. So if I create, say, hello.ss, which stands for scheme source, I can open this up and I can type in, I can create functions. So I'll just create, like, say, foo with AB, and that we'll just add those together, right? We'll also create our hello function with name, and we'll say format, I'll say false, hello there. Name. So that's basically that, and yeah, that'll be good. So what we can do is we can say open scheme, and we can load hello. Right? So now if we've loaded that file, that means that file has been loaded in and all the expressions have been run. So that means, and all the expressions that we have are just definitions. So we can say foo 3, 4, and that will print 7. And we can say hello, Phil, and it will say hello, Phil. Oh, actually, I want to do true is what I wanted to do. So, and I'll load this again, and I'll say hello, Phil, in there. So this will actually be a good way to show. So I wanted to show format, which is kind of like Scheme's version of printf in C. So you can print variables and have formatted printing just like you can in C. This first parameter that you put in can be true or false. And if you put in true, what it will do is it will print to the standard output port, right? So it will just be standard output, and you can see that that with true, it actually printed this out with the new line. If you set this to false, then what it will do is it will generate a string, right? And you can assign that string to a variable. And you can see what that looks like here. You can see I get a quoted string with a new line escape inside of it. So the other thing I wanted to show is that this -a, it says, okay, just, take the variable, right? And so you can have as many tilde-a's as you want, and you can put those variables in there. This last $% is a new line. So that's kind of a new line for doing default. Now, I believe you can also use the C escaped versions, right? So I can do \n, and if I load again and say hello Phil, it prints the same thing because \n is the C escapes are also acceptable. But you can do some pretty wild things with format. But I can go into that a little bit later. Now, the other thing that you can do with one of these scripts is, like, let's say that you want to, normally what I'll want to do is I'll want to write some bigger program. And so what I'll end up doing is I'll name my main file main. So main.ss. So that way I know that that's like my file that I can go to run the program. The other thing I'll typically do, and this is just a convention for me, is I'll create a main function. And I'll do all of my stuff here. So I can say, I can do a format, true, a plus, or 3 plus 4 equals this, right? So I'll do foo 3, 4. And actually, I can also do hello Phil, right? So I can do all my expressions in here, and then what I can do at the very end is just call main, right? So this is typically what I'll do for like a bigger program, is I'll create a main function. So that way I can always look, I can say, okay, the main file with the main function is like where I start. That's just something that I do. You don't have to do it, but that's something I just, it's kind of a nice thing to do. So if you load, now if you load the file, notice I'm calling main, right? Which means that the main function gets run. So that's kind of an interesting thing. That means that you can also run this as a script. So if you do scheme script hello, it will run this file. Now, if you don't have this main here, if you don't call anything, then it will just do the definitions and it'll just exit. But if you have definitions or actually top-level expressions, it will run those and you can see the outputs to that. So that's another way of running it. There are ways of actually compiling scripts into little shared object, compiled versions of the file. So basically binary versions of the scheme, and that will give you a little bit more performance because it doesn't have to parse everything. So you can have compiled versions of that, which I can. That's actually covered a little bit later. And then the other thing that you can do is you can actually create script files. So let's say that you just want to have kind of like bash scripts. You can do a shebang with user bin scheme, because I believe that that's where scheme is stored on by default. So which scheme, user bin scheme, and then if I say script, then it will run this as a script. So I can now do shell hello, I believe, was this hello, what's hello.ss? Can I do like that? Oh, wait, instead of shell, what I'll do is I'll I'll make it executable, because you can, if you look at this right now, there's no executable bit set for this hello.ss file. But if I do set it, I can do, say, sudo chmod plus x hello. And then, of course, I can, oops, oh no. So if I type this thing in, then what will happen, actually, if I'm able to type my password correctly, then what will happen is we've got hello.ss. So if I run hello.ss, then it actually runs the file, which is pretty nice. So now you can actually create these things, and you can create executable scripts. So instead of having, if you want something that's more complicated or more difficult than a bash script, you can actually still set this up as a scheme and then run it as just a normal script, which is kind of an interesting thing to do. Now, the other thing that you want to do is how do you program, right? So how would I know how format works or anything else? Like, how do I know how to program in Scheme? Well, I'm going to go back to the web page, and if you go back to this page, which I will link in the description below, there's actually two very useful resources here. They're essentially books. And the first one is the Scheme Programming Language 4th edition. And you can actually buy it in print, but there's also a free HTML version. And it has essentially almost everything you would want to know about Scheme. So it has a whole section, how to get started, how to work with simple expressions and top-level programs. And it has just everything in here. How do you create functions? How do you loop? How do you have conditionals like if statements and cond? And it has all of that. It has operations on all the different objects and the data types, input and output, syntactic extensions, which are macros, records, which are the equivalent of structs. It has everything in here. So super, super useful. And then the second resource is the Chez Scheme User's Guide. And there is an HTML version of this and also a PDF version of this. So the HTML version is nice. It's all hyperlinked, very good. And basically what happens is each one of these chapters is a big page, is a big web page. So every chapter is a web page. So that's super useful. The PDF version is also very useful because it's all one big document. So if you want to search for something you don't know where it is, then use the PDF version and you can just search the entire document. It has all of the same contents as the HTML version. It's just PDF version, right? So it even has stuff on, like, say, profiling here. Lots of good description of everything. So those two resources are absolutely very useful for getting started in Scheme, and even as if you know how to program, great references because they have essentially everything that you need. So that is essentially the basic coverage. I have covered installation, configuration, and a basic programming, how to get started. So that's essentially, technically, that's all you need to just get up and running with Chez Scheme. Probably what I'll do in the future is cover some more interesting things. I want to cover how to create a library, how to use the foreign function interface. Those things are very, very, very useful. And I'll probably make some videos about that in the future. But until then, have a great day.